Guys, I come to you with some breaking news. Believe it or not, Jon Jones called Dana the other night and he officially retired. And I understand this is breaking news to a lot of us. Jon Jones is, the greatest fighter of all time. Jon Jones has not run from fights, so we were all anticipating that Jon was going to fight Tom Aspinall, but no, it wasn't until he called Dana White just the other night and said that he's retiring that now we know he's retiring. I mean, there were, of course, months and months and months leading up to that where Jon was saying that he's not going to fight, that he's not interested in fighting. He told his teammate that one time on the phone that he's not fighting anymore and he will never, ever, ever step into the octagon ever again. Like, pretty much every single way you looked and turned, it was 100% certain that Jon Jones wasn't gonna fight. But he called Dana the other night, and now Dana White knows that. I don't know where the fuck Dana's been this whole time, but this is just chalk one up on another complete and total failure that Dana White has had as a businessman in recent years. But now we can finally move on. Tom Aspinall is the undisputed heavyweight champion. And now I think that it's time to start asking the very fair question. I mean, does anybody really stand a chance at beating Tom Aspinall? As we know, the heavyweight division, let me try to put this in a very nice, delicate, I would say respectful manner. The heavyweight division is dog shit. The heavyweight division is so atrocious. I think that if you were to personify my gambling ability as a UFC division, it would be this. It would be what you're looking at right now. Exactly why, I don't know. But what I do know is that most of these guys are pre-diabetic. Most of these guys are so bad and so unathletic and so uninspired when it comes to fighting that it's enough to make me want to fucking vomit. All right. Now maybe that wasn't as respectful as I was trying to initially, but I don't. What do we want from me? This division's terrible. But you know what? I actually do think that there's one heavyweight in particular. I think there's only one that really stands a chance against Tom Aspinall. But there are a few names you have to bring up. Starting off, Ciryl Gane. Now, believe it or not, I know Ciryl Gane gets memed on a lot because, let's just be honest here, the fact that he didn't know how to address a guillotine like this is horrible. It's so poor. It's so poor. I mean, this was not a very good guillotine. I mean, clearly, it got the job done. Jon got under his neck, but the fact that Ciryl was completely unaware of how to address this, it's really bad, but he is a very, very talented fighter, and he's a very high-level striker, and I think he's one of the few guys that can actually match Tom Aspinall's speed and footwork and fluidity on the feet. I mean, remember, Francis Ngannou did not land a single meaningful punch on Ciryl Gane their entire fight. He didn't touch him. He did not touch him. He had to resort to grappling Ciryl, and even then, the fight was not a shoo-in, but, again, Ciryl Gane's very good on the feet, and theoretically, he could actually pose some problems to Tom Aspinall. And I think the big reason for that is Ciryl has a very high-level kicking game, something that I have exhausted when talking about with Ilia Topuria is the fact that he does a very good job defending any sort of upper body kick because of the length of his arms compared to his torso. He blocks his head and his body so well. It's very difficult to sneak kicks in against him. But, looking at Tom Aspinall, clearly you can tell that this is an issue that he theoretically would have. The problem is he knocks everybody out so fast that nobody's actually able to set up any sort of kick against him. But obviously, when you're dealing with somebody who is such a high-level boxer, who, relies on that aspect of their game more than anything else, being able to stay on the outside, completely spam kicks to the midsection, every time they enter into range, maybe duck underneath and try to clinch, which is something that I actually think that Ciryl is capable of. He comes from a Muay Thai background. He's very good in the clinch himself. His kicks are very, very good. Amazing body kicks, amazing stabbing front kicks. This, I would say, is the style to use against Tom Aspinall. Now, of course, anytime you bring this up, though, the majority of people are going to scream at you at the top of their lungs saying, this motherfucker got cracked and dropped by a 315-pound Tai Tuivasa. And what I would say is, yeah, I know. I know it's not great, but in all fairness, that shot was like 1 out of, I would say, maybe 4 clean punches Tai landed the entire fight. Prior to that, post that, Gane was pretty much completely in control. Gane was essentially just fucking him up on the outside. When Tai entered into range, Gane actually put his lead hand up, anticipating that shot, but it being MMA with the 4-ounce gloves, that shot snuck in, dropped him. But look, for the most part, I hear you. It's not an amazing sign. But, Ciryl Gane completely dominated that fight and had him brutally hurt with kicks to the body. And I actually truly think that this is the kind of style you're going to want to use against Tom Aspinall. And theoretically, if Gane was uber safe in this fight, like he was against Francis Ngannou, stayed on his bike, was constantly moving, just stabbing kicks to the gut, stabbing body kicks, mixing up head kicks, it's actually going to be really difficult for Aspinall to deal with this style. Here's the problem, though. Here is the problem. Tom Aspinall, again, there is so much we still do not know about his skill set. There is so much unproven about the guy because of how dominant he is and because of the fact that he knocks everybody out so quickly. But you would imagine that at essentially any point he wanted, he could probably take Ciryl Gane down and just maul him on the ground. Theoretically. Now, apparently after the Jon Jones fight, Ciryl Gane has been really working on his grappling, and he's been really trying to fix that hole in his game. And somebody as athletic as he is, you might be able to expect that he can essentially close that gap, maybe. And, in all fairness, his grappling did not look bad against Alexander Volkov in his very last fight. He had some good takedowns, was hunting for submissions at times. But here's the thing. Remember, Tom Aspinall's first ever martial art was jiu-jitsu. His first ever martial art when he was a child, okay? Again, we haven't seen a ton of it in the UFC, but, again, based on some of these training clips, man, you've got Tom Aspinall fucking Granby rolling. You've got Tom Aspinall using reverse butterfly hooks to cause sweeps, which is something that, people lost their mind that Volkanovski, the 145er, pulled off. Obviously, we have seen his offensive grappling be, a serious fucking problem. Odds are, Ciryl is going to really struggle in this area. There, of course, is that video of Ciryl Gane getting grapple fucked by a Mavov, the 185er. Again, very interesting fight on the feet. You would imagine Cyryl's going to get bitched on the ground, though, pretty hard. You're going to imagine he's just going to get absolutely destroyed the second it hits the ground. Though, in all fairness, Tom Aspinall did lose one professional fight via heel hook. Ciryl Gane sometimes goes for really shitty heel hooks that would only work at heavyweight. Maybe there's a chance, but probably not. But regardless, right, Ciryl Gane isn't even the real number one contender. At least he shouldn't be because, Alexander Volkov got robbed against him. So, Volkov is obviously in the discussion. Though I do think that Volkov probably has way less of a chance beating Tom Aspinall than Ciryl Gane does. Look, Volkov's approach to the second Gane fight was way better than his initial one. In the second fight, he was way more grappling heavy. He was also just way more pressure heavy, was constantly getting in Cyryl's face, cutting off the distance, while at the same time doing a very good job maintaining all of the range that he had. And again, right, it was a way better approach. But again, obviously Tom Aspinall already fought Volkov. And it was so monumentally not close that it's almost kind of sad for Volkov. It just, every which way that fight went, Tom was miles ahead. He was so much faster, so much quicker, was just slipping every single shot that Volkov had, chaining it into takedowns. As soon as they hit the ground, it was not close. Again, right, maybe theoretically Volkov could use a more kicking-heavy approach like, we talked about with Ciryl, but the problem is he just doesn't have the footwork and the speed and the movement that Ciryl Gane does to actually stay on the outside and stay safe. It's just such a monumentally difficult task here for Volkov. I mean, again, there's a lot of areas where Ciryl Gane is going to be outskilled against Tom Aspinall, but at least you can say that he can use his movement and just try to stay away, see the shots coming better. But Volkov, I just don't think he's capable of that based on the fact that he's had, again, every single physical disadvantage against Tom Aspinall other than just being taller. I think this is almost game over right off the bat. Like, I really don't think there's much Volkov can do apart from, maybe sneaking a spinning back fist in where Tom just doesn't see it coming and knocking him out or something. But that's pretty much it. But now, the one other name that I think you can make in terms of current UFC fighters, Jailton Almeida. Now, Jailton Almeida, going back to how shit the heavyweight division is, you've got Jailton Almeida, who is a 205er, who decided to move up purely for the fact that heavyweights are so unskilled. And, of course, he is a very good grappler. He's very, very quick. He's got a very good shot. And his just overall grappling skills very high level. I mean, his last fight against Sergey Spivak, I think, shows that to an extremely high extent. I mean, look, he ends up getting hit with this, Haraya Goshi sort of whizzer kick, ends up on his back. But this sweep he ends up pulling off. All right, grabs the underhook, goes for deep half, grabs the foot, uses that as a lever to sweep Spivak. I mean, this is something that heavyweights do not do. It's not something you really see a heavyweight do. Now, of course, he ends up trying to take Sergey's back. Does a very good job maintaining the position despite kind of being a little too high here. But, eventually Sergey turns into him, ends up on top. But right as Sergey goes to pass the guard, Jailton just, again, uses that momentum, causes another really good sweep. They end up on the feet. And he actually lands a really good shot right here, hurts Sergey, ends up putting him away. I mean, I think he's developed a lot, and I think that he's now a much more properly sized heavyweight than he was in the past. I mean, the Curtis Blaydes fight just showed that if you're giving up 35 pounds, you are going to be so susceptible to the strength and the power of heavyweights when they actually get, somewhat technical. So I think Jailton Almeida, he does offer some interesting tests to Tom Aspinall because, of course, right, Tom is a very, very, very good hammer. Never really seen him be a nail before. And it would be very interesting to see Almeida, being so explosive and so fast and so technical to get in on a shot, actually put Tom on his back, and seeing just, how he operates there. Of course, though, right, Jailton Almeida, was more or less unable to submit Derek Lewis, who just isn't, technical in the fucking slightest. Of course, right, the grappling looked very good there. But theoretically, Tom Aspinall is going to be so much more technical than anybody, even Sergey Spivak. I think it's still a pretty tough ask. I think that, we go back to that reverse butterfly hook. We go back to that Granby roll. I mean, I think the one hope for Almeida here is that perhaps Tom Aspinall, if he can't put him away and is forced to have a lot of heavy grappling exchanges, might fatigue as we get into the second, third, fourth, fifth rounds. But we're just completely up in the air with that. I mean, we just don't know. Of course, on the feet, you're going to say that Tom Aspinall is going to have a massive advantage. And, I mean, look, let's just say, right, that Almeida does get in on a shot against Aspinall, puts him down, goes to take his back, or whatever. And he ends up getting swept like Sergey Spivak swept him. He ends up on his back, and he's eating ground and pound shots like this. But against Tom Aspinall, it's going to be far, far more devastating, even with the extra size he put on. I think that, Almeida has some hope in terms of taking the fight into deep waters, but even at that point, it's not a shoo-in. And I think the only interesting thing about an Almeida fight is just kind of seeing more of Tom Aspinall's skill set against an explosive, skilled grappler. But apart from that, if you're getting swept like this against Spivak and eating shots like this, you better hope that's not Tom Aspinall, because it's going to be a lot worse than the hammer fists that Curtis Blades was landing against you. So I think it's an interesting fight. But again, I'll take it over Volkov for sure, but I would not be riding super high on Almeida. But of course, right, the other name, he wants to come back to the UFC, Francis Ngannou. Now, is Francis Ngannou actually going to come back to the UFC? I doubt it, because look, Francis Ngannou, I think now that he's left the UFC and, had the Tyson Fury fight and had the Renan Ferreira fight, maybe things have changed. Honestly, no, I'm sure they probably have changed on this front. But prior to that, he was not a pay-per-view draw. His fight against Ciryl Gane did 350,000 buys, something like that. The card generated $22 million in pay-per-view sales. The UFC pays half of that to distributors, so they only made about $12 million for Francis Ngannou's last fight. After that, they offered him $8 million a fight, which is honestly, as crazy as this is to say, kind of generous for the UFC, believe it or not. But look, point is, Francis did make the right choice turning it down. Obviously, the Tyson Fury fight is all you need to know that he made the right choice. But he's now kind of in a tough spot. He signed with the PFL. There are no heavyweights for him to fight at the PFL anymore. Renan Ferreira was the only interesting fight. Maybe his boxing career. Anthony Joshua kind of ruined that. I think that he doesn't really have much to do right now other than come back to the UFC where actual competition is, and now Dana White has full monopoly on that opportunity, and I can't really see it happening. But I do think Francis is the one really interesting fight for Tom, and I think he theoretically can actually beat Tom Aspinall. On the feet, though, Tom is going to still have a massive advantage. I think he's a more technical boxer than Francis Ngannou is. I think he's way quicker, way faster. I think he even has a much more diverse skill set on the feet. You know what I mean? Moving in and out, slamming leg kicks, sneaking in takedowns. But one thing you cannot deny about Francis Ngannou: this motherfucker is jacked and powerful and strong. I mean, look, right, a lot of people attribute Francis Ngannou's size and strength from working in the sand mines. Kamaru Usman claims that just go to Africa, you're going to see a bunch of Francis Ngannous. Well, I mean, look, this is what Francis Ngannou looked like while he was working in those sand mines. Francis Ngannou claims that he never lifts any weights. So I don't know. I mean, you tell me how he went from looking like this to looking like this without lifting any weights. I mean, I think that, he probably, I imagine, is blasting gear, in my opinion. Which, again, I think that's great. I think that everybody should be on gear in the UFC. So, look, I'm not hating. I'm just saying that if Francis Ngannou gets in on a shot against Tom Aspinall, that's a problem, because he's strong and he's powerful and he himself, I think, is pretty quick. And I think that, there is a level of danger when it comes to Francis Ngannou's ground and pound that is unheard of. Right? Very, very, very few people can truly knock you out with shots like this when you're on the ground. But Francis Ngannou, if he gets in on a shot against Tom Aspinall, and Tom Aspinall tries to cause a scramble, gets to his knees, whatever, there is so much risk of him getting knocked out. I mean, you eat a single ground and pound shot from Francis Ngannou, and there is a very high likelihood that the fight's over. And that is a level of danger that's pretty unheard of when it comes to ground and pound. And that's the difficult thing here for Tom, is like, okay, you cause a scramble, whatever, you end up in a turtle position. Francis Ngannou has developed his grappling to, I would say, a decent extent. He has good top control. His takedowns are good. Obviously, I mean, look at this sequence against Ciryl Gane. Just fucking ragdolls him. I mean, Francis is so powerful and strong, and I mean, man, the risk now is so high if you do get taken down by him. I mean, that is a serious problem. I mean, I don't think there's anybody who I've mentioned prior at heavyweight who has this kind of danger for Tom Aspinall than Francis Ngannou does. Again, on the feet, there's always that opportunity that he clips Tom with a shot. We've seen Tom get clipped with the occasional shot, but the problem is, because Tom is so fast, so quick, so light on his feet, the odds of really getting your body behind a clean punch and really clipping him is so small. I mean, everybody talks about this little shot that Sergey Pavlovich landed. I mean, let's be real, this was an arm punch. With how quick Tom is, Sergey was not getting his body weight behind this shot. I mean, it's so hard to time a clean shot against Tom. Again, though, it is 100% possible that Francis clips him. But I think the danger comes from the fact that even if you're defending the takedown decently well, he's so strong that he can ragdoll you even with decent defense. And then, man, I think the odds of Tom getting knocked out are genuinely scarily high. And of course, like I keep saying, Tom's takedown defense is grappling. It's still such a gray area that it's so hard to speak definitive about, exactly what's going to take place if Francis gets in on a shot. But, again, for the most part, I'm going to lean very heavily towards Tom on the feet. I think he's quicker, faster, still more technical, far more diverse skill set. But I think the improvements Francis has made in the grappling in particular is the one thing that I would say that is the one thing that puts him in the conversation as the one heavyweight that can actually beat Tom Aspinall.